Osai Bunsuamwa, Obiamwa, as is popularly known, is a legal practitioner, and he's also a member of parliament for Ikapim South, and we are privileged to have him in the studio. He will also be joined by another legal practitioner, Abraham Amaliba, who is also with the NDC's legal team. And thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
And we'll be talking foremost about decision taken by the National Council of the MPP on the affirmative action directive that had early on been issued by the National Executive Committee of the party. But President Goodluck Jonathan has lost, so he's now become an ex-president. We have a president-elect in the person of General Muhammadu Buhari, and he's been making some formal speeches, and he's reverted to the subject of what the normal political talk should be. He says he needs patience on the promises of clamping down on the subject of election fraud, issues of corruption, and also the subject of Boko Haram. First, comment about the election that passed, and then his formal comments now.
Well, thank you, Roland, and good morning to lawyer viewers. Of course, the elections in Nigeria is historic. Historic in the sense that this is the first time that Nigeria is changing governments based on different parties. More or less, PDP has been in charge of Nigeria since 1999. And they've become like the ANC in South Africa. They win elections every time. So for 16 continuous years, they've been in power. There's not been any change. When Basanjo served his term, Yadua came in. Unfortunately, they lost him, and then the running mate or the vice president had to step in. That is good luck. So it's been PDP all along. Other parties have been trying, and for Buhari, this is his fourth time that he's tried to be president after being head of state as a military ruler. So it's historic. And if you look at what went on, one, there was a big crack in PDP to the extent that former President Obasanjo, of all people, said that they wanted to throw him out of the party, so he would rather leave first. Indeed, in a symbolic way, destroyed his card and left. Several governors, senators, etc. were not happy with PDP. They said they were decamping. Now in decamping, they managed to get Buhari to be the symbol, the leader of so-called all progressives. So all the other parties who could also stand on their own then managed to rally behind Buhari. So it became one big alliance. And then if we were to even look at the candidates, for Buhari, a Muslim with military background from the north, he went for a preacher from the south, very popular, and who could also gather the votes. And of course, because of the break, where PDP was being felt to be strong, they ended up losing those states to the progressives. So it's something that they had to put together to make sure that, for once, they were able to push out the PDP and also push out Jonathan. That is history. And there were several issues that came up, apart from Boko Haram, major issues about corruption, major issues about the economy, especially with the oil bust. The fact that Nigeria was not doing well when it even came to employment and everything. So everything came together, and they managed to do the right things at the right time. And then even got the Electoral Commission, which thought that they had to try and do their best, even though it was not perfect. What was interesting was university professors being in charge of the elections, being the returning officers for the states.
They call them collation officers.
Collation officers. And then,
almost synonymous with what we do here.
With what we do here. And then Professor Jaga himself showing enough knowledge and confidence about what he was supposed to do.
But just to break in, do you think it's just enough for perhaps countries like Ghana, etc., to say, well, we are going to have elections next, and for all the talk that we've had and the experience we had with the Supreme Court petition, etc., and the reforms that the media and the civil society and the political parties have been calling for, having just intellectuals like professors being returning officers is enough, or you need commitment of all stakeholders involved?
Well, we need to learn from them, at least the best practices, and then see how we can adapt to our circumstances. For instance, because they knew we had a problem in the last elections with biometric verification, the system they adopted was for you to use your card to confirm that indeed you were the card holder or you were the registered voter.
So almost
before
as
you
if
could
it's
verify
an electronic reading card. Okay.
Before you could also verify on the biometric machine. So that if the machine could not verify you, at least the card had identified you as the person.
So that's an upgrade on ours.
That's an upgrade on ours, and we need to look at it, see what they went through, the challenges they faced, how do we also upgrade it to suit us. Because it's a major issue that if the only form of verification, that is if you have all your fingers, is that you should put your finger on the machine, and if it doesn't pick you, then it becomes an issue. The average person there wants to know, did this person register for him to be here, or didn't he register, or he didn't register, but he's being put on the card to vote. So it's something that we need to learn. There are several things that they manage to do, even collation and declaration of results, and then the openness of it, transparency, so that if even there are mistakes, everybody sees that this is how it went, this is how it should have gone. A lot that we need to do about that.
Okay. Now, once the president-elect has started talking, the subject of Boko Haram is critical, and it was a critical subject in the electioneering and the speeches that were given. How does he go about it?
Well, at least he's giving us an idea that, one, he needs ECOWAS support, he needs support from neighboring countries, those who are also directly affected by this menace. And of course, he would need international support, that's AU and UN support. But he has, with that background, a military background, he probably would command a certain kind of respect and confidence from the military to be able to see this as a major problem that they should address. So for Boko Haram, that is his immediate task. He needs to be seen to be tackling it head on. Negotiation probably is out, but military might, support from other nations, and then also strategy to make sure that this doesn't destroy the country and the sub-region. But he's gone beyond Boko Haram. What I could gather from his statement, in sum, is that the culture of PDP, one party being in power for 16 years, it's brought in a certain culture. You have to look at that culture and see how you take away all the negative things. If it was business as usual, as for PDP, we always take power. And so they took things for granted. Corruption is so pervasive. How do they account for their oil money? The governors, the senators, ministers, how do you put them in check? How do you make sure that you pick people who are effective, who have integrity, who are patriotic, who think that Nigeria can do far better than what it's doing? And that is not, we are not in to amass wealth and then we end up with all sorts of issues and problems. There are some Nigerian governors in jail, even outside Nigeria, all because of integrity issues. Somebody becomes a governor and his budget is even bigger than the state. And then starts owning mansions, private jets, all sorts of luxurious things, and fat bank accounts in foreign banks. And then the state is left in penury. So obviously, it's a certain culture that they should find a way of dealing with so that Nigeria gets even a better image And then the average person, especially the youth, will have hope in this very populous, big, famous country.
Now, at what point do we say that even though we've had an amalgamation of the various progressives who have come together in ACP, we still have old politicians who are still out there? For example, even just the last 24 hours, Obasanjo has been making calls to the president-elect that he's still available. Well, you could place critical roles. The criticism from civil society, we've had one EP and a number of observers also say that we still have the old elements within the politics of Nigeria. How, as politicians, do they address that?
Well, of course, for Nigeria, the major issue are the big players. Some are in business, some are in politics, some are in the social life, but especially the bank rulers, those who put in so much, wanting to also be part of it, either directly involved or
get something in return.
Having surrogates to play in or stay in for them and get something in return. It's a major issue for Nigeria. And because it's progressives, once they be able to put together a team to win the elections, they should be able to put together a team to run the country. If they start disagreeing on who should be where, on how the system should run, then they will start having problems. Especially who should be finance minister, who should be energy minister.
That's a possibility, especially when you have a number of other, some smaller or medium parties.
If it's a coalition, they should decide on how to also run the government. Of course, there are bigger players and smaller players in the whole coalition. You have to agree that, okay, bring two persons to run particular portfolios. Or even agreeing on the huge portfolios, like energy, or like petroleum, finance, employment, etc., would also bring its own challenges. So it's luckily for Buhari, he has a certain kind of experience. It's for him to be able to put things together. Otherwise, right from the beginning, they start looking weak. And then, of course, PDP will not be sleeping. He will still be looking at it and see how they can quickly come back to say that you probably made a mistake in bringing this report in. It's a major challenge and issue for him. Thankfully, there's a short period, although, but it's enough for them to form government within the transition, and then, as they say, hit the ground running.
For the lesson that we have to learn, and we're talking about beefing up personnel and also ensuring that we have the needed reforms in our country, Ghana. If you know we're going to have elections perhaps in Togo before we come to Ghana, what should we be learning beyond the subject of who we filled, who is a returning officer, and how do the political parties start the whole process of putting pressure on the Electoral Commission to undertake those reforms?
Well, sometimes I am a bit cautious in using expressions like putting pressure on the Electoral Commission.
Right.
But the Electoral Commission should also admit its shortfalls and then also be more proactive and then see it as a win-win situation. The ultimate goal is to have a very successful elections. Then you take the praise and everybody is happy. If you create the impression that because somebody has said it, I will not take it, or I'm impervious to criticism, or I'm a perfect institution, nobody can offer any advice, it creates a problem. And sometimes they are quick to react to suggestions and even criticisms. But if you are a public institution, obviously you should open up and also be ready to take in some criticisms, even if they are strong. So they have a lot of work to do. They should be institutional reform. I think they accept it. For instance, the IT department, how does it run? How do we get the best people to run it? For instance, how come all this time you don't have a legal department? Your training, how do you go about it? The major issue of the staff you bring on board who are not permanent staff, the non-permanent staff, those you recruit within a short period to do the work, and after that they move away. How accountable are they to you, and how committed are they to the whole cause? That's how come Nigeria ended up taking accomplished people in society so that these people will know that their integrity and everything is at stake.
You think we should follow suit, or especially on that very level? Because I see that it's being harped on by many...
not necessarily going for university professors or heads of department, etc., but identifying people who think that their reputation is at stake. You don't just go and pick anybody and say non-permanent staff, be the presiding officer. He fills the form anyhow, thinking that nothing will happen. It can easily be compromised. Eventually, we end up in court, and the things which come out does not embarrass only the Electoral Commission, but the whole nation. That these are the kind of people you have in running your elections. Well, what does it take to identify the right people to run your elections so that everybody will be satisfied? If not everybody will think that something very good has been done. So these are issues that we should not, and the issue should really, well, fortunately or unfortunately, by June, we should have a new chairman of the commission. Unfortunately, because then the old will go away, the new will come. If you don't pick somebody who will have institutional memory, who is even interested in this whole game of elections, then we will be starting on a false premise. Because it's not everybody who is interested. Somebody was put at charge, before due respect, and it turned out that the person was not too interested in the work of charge, and all these problems have come up. So if you bring somebody to also run the EC, the person is not known in the electoral system committee or community. It's a problem. So the person is not known to be interested in electoral matters. You have
it's
a problem.
not just what we're talking about, formative interest, but
yes,
real interest.
Real interest.
In
And
terms
a
of
certain
expertise
and
okay.
all those things that will come in.
Okay.